In today's gospel, Jesus seems to be chewing out the Pharisees for refusing to accept him as the Messiah. So at this point in the gospels, Jesus had already been doing some pretty amazing things. He'd been ticking off all the boxes, all the check boxes for the Messiah. So he'd been doing a lot of miracles, he'd been healing people, he'd been feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. But because of the Pharisees' hardness of heart, and perhaps because of a little bit of jealousy as well, they refused to recognize him as the Messiah. Now, I imagine most of you listening to me now are unlike the Pharisees in that you have already come to accept Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of God. But in small ways, like the Pharisees, we too can refuse or fail to recognize the action of Christ in our lives. See, the fact is that Christ is always working in our lives. He's always communicating himself to us. He's always trying to get to us through the circumstances of our lives. The question is, do we have the eyes and the patience to notice? Part of the reason is because most of these moments are subtle and hidden ways that Christ gets to us. Think, for example, of how Jesus was born. He was born in an out-of-the-way town in Bethlehem, in an out-of-the-way place outside of Bethlehem in a stable. So this tends to be the mode that Jesus often gets to us. One example, a more modern example, is with Saint Therese of Lisieux, who we just celebrated not too long ago. One day, Saint Therese went for a walk in the park, and she noticed a mother sparrow huddling her baby chicks under her wing. And it was a pretty sight, but certainly not like a burning bush moment for Saint Therese. But Saint Therese thought, I've got nowhere to go. I'm in no particular rush, so I'm just going to enjoy this scene from nature. And after a while, the action of this mother sparrow huddling her chicks under her wing, that reminded Saint Therese of how God had been doing the same thing with her since her childhood. How God the Father had been protecting her, gathering her under his protective wing. So the thought had a great impact on Saint Therese. It actually was a hallmark moment for her. She writes about it in her diary, even though on the surface, and at first, it wasn't really an earth-shattering moment. So it all happened when Saint Therese decided just to stop and take a moment to enjoy something from nature and allow God to speak to her through that. So again, I'm not saying any of you are like the Pharisees in outright rejecting Jesus as the Messiah, but you'd be surprised at how many subtle invitations we get from Jesus on a daily basis that we either refuse to recognize or we just simply pass up. So the invitation for us today is maybe towards the end of the day, in the evening time, when you're in your prayers, ask the Lord, which event today were you trying to communicate to me? Which event today were you most active? What do you want me to notice? And then be open to noticing things. Pay attention to the emotions that you had during the day, the conversations that you had with people, the food that you ate, the different circumstances. God can use anything and anyone to try to communicate to us. So if you ask this question honestly, Lord, what event today were you really active and you want me to notice something? You say that honestly and you give God maybe a window of 2 minutes. You'd be pleasantly surprised at what he'll show you.